During the 2023 Summit for Democracy, businesses were invited to make specific commitments to steps they can take to support democratic resilience in the countries where they operate and where they source from. CSIS hosted a forum for companies to talk about these new commitments, as well as their broader efforts to address 4 key areas where the private sector has a disproportionate influence over democracy and human rights. The first is the impact of technology on democracy. This is an area where a number of technology companies made commitments to better prevent the misuse of technology by authoritarian regimes, and to identify tools and resources at their disposal to support civil society organizations, human rights activists, journalists, and everyday citizens fighting to promote or defend democracy. This includes actions companies have taken in the context of the war in Ukraine, both to support the Ukrainian government's efforts to resist the Russian invasion, as well as to support the activism of everyday citizens.
What we saw early in the conflict was that the Russian government deployed a bunch of basic DDoS attacks against critical infrastructure just to scare people. So things against banks, against media organizations, making them look like they were offline, making it look like it was much more powerful than it might have been. We have tools that can protect against that. It was really important for us to make sure that those were things that were easily available.
It's encouraging to see technology companies step up because the impact that they have on democracy is significant and in many ways disproportionately important in the context of the strategies being adopted around the world to combat democratic backsliding and to make it more difficult for authoritarians to abuse their citizens. Secondly, companies focused on efforts they can undertake to combat corruption, an area where their interests and the interests of responsible governments and civil society very much align. A number of companies decided to participate in U.S. government-sponsored initiatives to build the capacity of both host governments and small and medium-sized enterprises to resist bribery and other forms of corruption.
At Amazon, we find that there is no business opportunity that's important enough to ignore corruption. In fact, we've walked away from very big opportunities if we need to in order to do business ethically and legally. And we are unafraid to do so because we know how important that is.
Thirdly, companies made commitments to support the work of human rights defenders and activists and to help maintain free and open civic space by expanding the availability of security protections and supporting independent media outlets' efforts to become financially self-sufficient.
We are very proud to be announcing that we are creating a $2 million fund to help support human rights organizations around the world do a better job of resisting and protecting themselves from some of these kinds of online threats.
A fourth area where companies have a tremendous influence over the resilience of democracy is around labor rights, and in particular, how companies treat their workers in direct employment as well as in their supply chains.
The workplace is a fundamental place for democracy to really deliver for real people, and the private sector has a major role in making sure that those fundamental rights and laws are not undermined in the daily lives of workers, but in fact are uplifted.
While we saw a commitment to improve migrant worker recruitment practices that's important, we did not see broader announcements by companies to address issues like workplace inequality, living wage, workplace health and safety, or other practices. And this will be an area it's extremely important for companies to address going forward. Looking ahead, as the EU moves towards setting in place mandatory company due diligence requirements, and as the US continues to expand enforcement of its forced labor import bans, among other moves by governments, the role of the private sector in respecting human rights and supporting resilient democracy will continue to be scrutinized. And as planning begins for a third Summit for Democracy in South Korea in 2024, we'll be watching the private sector closely, both to track implementation of the commitments made during this summit, as well as potential additional steps it can take in the future.
Regardless of where one sits in the economy or the business community, we each have the opportunity to ask ourselves, where can we make a difference in working with people and governments across civil society and with each other to defend democracy?